So we're back. We're just going to quickly see if we can fix up our CSS. So I've defined a custom primary color and a BG footer. I'm going to change a few of my class definitions to try and get our custom styles to work. So instead of BG primary here, I'm going to use maybe custom primary. We'll see if that makes my nav bar my little more sort of more turquoise color. There. And I'm going to change my footer. Instead of my class being BG dark, I'll use my BG footer class, which should make it a bit of a lighter gray, almost like a bluey gray. Okay. I'm also going to change on my items. I'm going to change this button so it also uses my custom primary color. Instead of being royal blue, it'll be more this kind of bluish green. So in item details, my button is BTN primary. I'll make it custom primary. Okay, that didn't quite work for me either. All right, I'll have to leave that one for now. That's enough. Enough of me making a mess of CSS for today. We've got some of it to work. Okay, so we want to deal with error handling. So we had error handling before around our database connection. There's a few things we want to implement around error handling. I don't need to teach you guys what try-catch is. You already know this from both your programming fundamentals, your C# course, the work you're doing in Java. So we can use try-catch, and we actually had try-catch in here originally. So we're going to add try-catch. There's one other thing we're going to add to our database file. Right now, if we have a database error, like we misname a table in the database, PDO by default, it doesn't show us those error messages. But for debugging purposes, I want to turn these things on. So if we set the attribute I want to set the error mode to error mode exception, meaning if there is an issue with our database, we want to be able to see the error message. We want PDO to show it to us. So I'm going to add that to my database file. That's going to help me catch and trap errors with our database. So there's a couple of kinds of errors we want to handle here. The first one is anytime we're connecting to the database, so I'll go to my items page, anytime we're trying to connect to the database and interact with it, we should be using a try-catch block. So I'm going to take all of the code that's in here indent it, and we're going to wrap it, the entire thing, in a try-catch. Try to connect. So we'll put a try and an opening curly brace above our connection. We'll close it down here. And in this case, we'll catch an exception that I'll maybe just call E. So what should we do if we get any kind of error? What typically happens on a web application when there's an error? Well, that's one option. We could show the error message. When we're developing, that's a good idea. What if this is like a production website? What happens? Yeah, Chris, I think that's a good idea. We maybe want to redirect the user to an error page. And then, right, we just show kind of a generic error page, Megan. Now, we might write it to a log. We can't necessarily write to the database because the error might be that we can't connect to the database. Another thing we can do, which I will show you how to do, is we can send ourselves an an email notification. This won't work on your local host, but it will work if you upload your pages to AWS. I'll show you how to do it. Probably in a production website, we want to do it. I don't recommend you enable it here, but I will show you how to do it. So in this case, we will just use header location, and we'll take the user to a new page we're going to create called error.php. Okay, so there's our catch block. And we've got try and a curly brace up above. So I'm going to break my query here just so we can see how this works. So right now our select query, we're selecting from the items table with an S. Maybe I just misspell the table name. So my query is now selecting from a table called item. That table doesn't exist in the database. This should catch an exception. So I'm going to change my query this way. Go back to the grocery list. And now notice our error is caught and it's trying to load error.php. So we can build this quickly, just a simple file that's got our header and footer with, as Megan said, just a generic error message in the middle. So I'm going to make a new PHP file I'll call error. Again, I'm going to take out all the HTML because we're just going to use our header and footer. So we'll set up a title and we'll include I guess I should use single quotes for consistency. We'll include the header and footer. We'll just put on a main section. You can put on any kind of generic message. We don't really want to tell the user the specific problem. So here's my sample error page. You don't have to copy it. You can use your own. You can say whatever you want. But here's the link if you want mine, no problem. So now if I try and load my grocery list again, now I get a better looking error page. If I wanted to also in my catch, so if I wanted to send myself a mail message, I would do something like this. I'd use the mail function. And here, you know, me@email.com. Send myself the subject, and I would send myself the error variable, you know, contact at plant food. So something like this. Actually, this would be from colon. So here's how you would send mail with a PHP script. I'm not actually going to send it though, because I can't send it from my local host, and we're not using our AWS server with a mail server. So to protect it being abused for spam. So I'll comment that out, but I'll leave it here so you can see if you wanted to email yourself. And I do this with my client sites, and that way, if somebody's on the site and has an error and it gets caught with a try catch, I automatically get notified, and I include what page they were on and information about the error, and then I can go and try it and fix it. Many times my clients will call an email and say, somebody's reported an error on our website, and I say, I know, I already fixed it, because I get those email notifications. Yeah, one of the other neat things about it is when people try to break the sites with SQL injection, if you handle those with try catch, I would send myself those messages. So years ago, when one of my clients was Walmart Canada, every night at about 2 a.m., I'd get about 24 error emails where I could literally see the SQL, because I would send myself any form data, and I could see all of the hacking attempts that hackers would enter into the forms on Walmart Canada Photo Center. But fortunately, I had proper error handling, so I knew this was going on. So any of the pages where we're interacting with the database, so here on item details, for example, we should probably do a try. And catch here as well. And again, and I should do the same thing on my save and delete pages. Any page where we're interacting with the database. So the query at the top of item details, where we're trying to connect and go ahead and fetch data. I'll put it as well on delete, same thing. Just wrap this in a try catch. I can probably fix my query on items now. And I'll do it on save as well. If we're okay. Try to connect. Do all this stuff. But catch any errors. So this will handle any problems with our database. If we can't connect or there's something wrong with our SQL, we're missing a parameter, users aren't going to see those error messages, right? They're going to get this. So normally, an important thing about when you put your try catches in. Normally, we add our try catch blocks at the end. Why? Why don't we put them in as we're building the individual pages? We can write try-catch as we're coding the pages, but it's generally not a very good idea. Okay, Megan, that's one reason, yes. Can you think of why it would be better to leave your try-catch blocks and add them at a later time rather than when you're coding your pages? Thank you, Chris. Because right now when we have an error, it just takes us here. We don't get any information about the error, which is what we want for our end users, but it makes debugging more difficult. So when we're developing, we want to leave the try-catch blocks out so we can, as Chris said, see the errors ourselves to do the debug and to do the fixes. The try-catch happens at the end. So I've added try-catch to items, item details, delete item, and save item. Now there's one special kind of error that we can't handle in a web application. I mean, there's a few, but one common error that we cannot handle with try-catch blocks. It's probably the most common error that happens on websites. What's the most common error that happens on a website? Thank you, Adil. A 404. What is a 404 error? What does it mean? Right, it means the page that's requested doesn't exist. So I get this. So no try-catch can handle this. This has to be handled on the server. So this is the last thing we're going to do today is deal with our 404 handling. Okay. So first of all, we want to create a 404 page. So I'm going to go to my error page. It's going to be almost an exact copy, but we should have a custom 404 page. So I'm going to copy everything that's here. I'm going to make one more file for today, which I guess we'll need two files for this. I'm going to make a new PHP file called 404. I'm going to delete, again, all of our HTML boilerplate. I'm going to change the title, and we'll just say the page you requested couldn't be found. Please use a link above. So we've built this 404 page. Put it up on Pastebin. But we actually have to configure the server to use it. And because we're working with an Apache web server, Apache gives us a particular configuration file that has a bit of a bizarre name. And in there, we can configure how the server should handle the 404 not found request. So I'm going to make one more file. Let's go back to your project, make a new file, and this file has a strange name. Just pick file as the type. The file is called .htaccess. It's a Linux file. Jacob, I think you might be on Linux. You might be familiar with htaccess. So there's actually no name before the dot. So create the file called .htaccess. And in here, we need to specify the path for a 404, our 404 document. So it's going to be error document 404. Now I'm going to try for now with a fully qualified path. So this is only going to work on my local host. So you won't use :800. So I'm going to direct any 404 responses to be handled by my 404 page. If I upload this to AWS, obviously I need to use the, so that would probably be a better idea. I'll put all this stuff on AWS. Why not? Just open up and upload everything to AWS. Okay. So I'm going to upload my entire lamp food folder. Yeah, you may have :80 is the default, Megan. So you don't need :80. It should be the default. But that will only work locally. So I'm going to use my, and I should probably use HTTPS. We'll talk about that in the next week or two as well. You could also use lamp.computerstudies instead of the IP address that starts with 15. This is easier to remember and also supports an SSL certificate. So I can actually try this on AWS. Here. And also notice, because we named our homepage index.php, that's the default document. So I don't even need to put in index. So now I can browse around online. But what happens if I go to a page that doesn't exist? Right. So now you'll notice it redirects me to my 404 page. Any URL, it'll just load 404. Because Chris, where would you put the try catch? That's the challenge, right? I'm putting in a URL that doesn't exist. So there is no page I can write. The server just looks at that URL and says, oh, there's nothing here. So there isn't any place that that try catch would be able to execute. We can only execute it within the context of a page, but that page has to exist. It could, but no existing page would execute at this URL. Right? This URL doesn't exist. So the server is never going to load a file that has working PHP code on it. So that file that has the require and include, that file has to be called. The only way it can be called is if the URL to that file is requested. So no page ever gets loaded. So if no page gets loaded, no PHP code can execute. The server can't run can't interpret the PHP code outside of an individual file being loaded. So we've got to use htaccess to actually configure the server. So this is one way. Now, some hosting companies actually give you a simpler way. So some of my domains, for example, I'll show you hosting company that I use. I have some PHP site, not all the sites here, but there are some PHP sites here. So here, custom error. So in the hosting panel, it actually lets me set up the URL to a 404 page right here. So I could pick a client site. And I could actually specify. So this would do the same thing that the htaccess will do. Okay, so now this takes care of anything. When htaccess tells the server, if you get a 404 response at any URL, just redirect the user off to the 404 page. So now we've got both try catch, and we've got that go to a general error page, and we have 404 handling. So all of these things that we've built today, the shared header, shared footer, try catch for our database interactions, generic error page 404, these are all things that you're going to be including in assignment 2, which I will give out and go over next week. So our sites, we're getting here. We're getting closer and closer to, a functional site that has all of the pieces we want. Our next lesson is a really important lesson. We're about done for today. I'm going to upload to GitHub in a second. But what we want to do next week, right now, everything here is public. So anybody can come to this URL anywhere in the world, and they can do anything they want with my grocery list. They can add all kinds of junk. They can edit. They can delete. So we want to control access to this. So somebody would have to register and log in order to be able to make any changes to it. Maybe they can see the list, perhaps as an anonymous user, but they wouldn't be able to see or access my add, edit, and delete links. Okay. So you do have a quiz. You will be able to get the answers as soon as you finish the quiz today. That's the only thing for this week. Be sure to start, you're here at the start of class next week so that we can go over assignment 2. Okay, and there's going to be a couple of options in there for you to choose from. I'm going to upload everything to GitHub. The sun is still out, so it's 8 degrees. I think it's 8 degrees right now. So hopefully you can get outside and have a great week. I'll see everybody next week. Thanks, you too.